Elizabeth Taylor has died. She died in the early hours this morning from congestive heart failure.
Well, today her incredible legacy lives on through her family.
Why won't you face the truth just once? About Skipper, about me, about yourself.
They grew up in the shadow of a woman the world refused to ignore. A woman whose eyes could command a room, whose beauty rewrote Hollywood, and whose fame never slept, even when her children needed her most. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't just a movie star. She was a storm, brilliant, devastating, unforgettable. And while the world celebrated her diamonds, her scandals, her marriages, 4 children were quietly learning what it meant to be raised by a legend and what it cost them. Some inherited her fire, some ran from it, and some were broken before they even had a chance. This is the story of the children who loved Elizabeth Taylor, survived her fame, and spent the rest of their lives trying to build identities the world would never confuse with hers. If you love true stories from the golden age of Hollywood, the secrets, the pain, the resilience, hit follow on RetroWaves. We bring forgotten legacies back to life. To the world, Elizabeth Taylor was flawless, 2-time Oscar winner, fashion icon, humanitarian, the woman who captured the hearts of Richard Burton, Mike Todd, and millions of fans. But to her children, she was something far more complicated. They adored her deeply. But they also endured the price of her celebrity, the paparazzi at their schools, the whispers, the taunts, the constant feeling that their mother belonged to everyone except them. Each child had to find a way to live beyond her shadow or be swallowed by it. And it all begins with the son who inherited her eyes and her struggle to outrun the world's expectations. The world noticed him before he could speak. Born in 1953 to Elizabeth Taylor and British actor Michael Wilding, Michael Jr. carried a face the public recognized immediately. The same violet eyes, the same striking features, the same quiet intensity. People would stop and stare, whispering, "He looks just like her." But that resemblance came with a burden. Elizabeth had wanted stability when she married Michael Wilding Sr., a calm after the emotional storms of her earlier romances. For a short time, their home was peaceful. But peace doesn't last long when your mother is Elizabeth Taylor. Their marriage ended in 1957, and Michael Jr., only a child, found himself navigating a life filled with new stepfathers, film sets, hotel rooms, and flashing cameras. As he grew older, Hollywood expected him to follow in his mother's footsteps. He tried. He appeared on popular shows like Dallas and Guiding Light.
Yeah, I suppose so, but the question is, what kind of a signal would Largo use?
Producers loved his look, that unmistakable Taylor mystique, but something inside him resisted. Acting felt like trying to imitate a voice that wasn't his. Every role felt like a reminder of a legacy he didn't choose, and so, quietly, he disappeared from the screens the world expected him to conquer. In 1991, Michael Wilding Jr. did something few Hollywood heirs ever dare to do. He left. He left the studios. He left the cameras. He left the expectations tied to his mother's name. He moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, a place where the mountains breathe differently, where fame means nothing, and where a man can finally hear his own thoughts. There, in the desert heat and quiet, he discovered something that had been waiting inside him all along: stone. He described sculpting as a conversation, one where he could finally speak without being compared to anyone. He carved marble, limestone, bronze, chipping away everything unnecessary until he found what mattered. Some say this was symbolic. Michael Jr. had spent his whole life removing what didn't belong to him, the comparisons, the assumptions, the spotlight. In Santa Fe, he wasn't Elizabeth Taylor's son. He was an artist. Despite the quiet life he built, one truth never changed. Michael adored his mother. He proved it in 1991 when he walked her down the aisle at her wedding to Larry Fortensky, a gesture filled with love, pride, and the unspoken history between them. And when Elizabeth Taylor died in 2011, he released a statement that revealed more than any interview ever had. "My mother was an extraordinary woman who lived life to the fullest, but Michael Jr. also learned something essential from her life: the importance of protecting his own." He stayed private, letting his children, Layla, Naomi, and Tarquin, become the public guardians of Elizabeth Taylor's legacy, and through them, the next generation of Taylors would carry a torch Michael himself chose to hold only in the quiet. But he wasn't the only child who lived between love and chaos. Another son grew up watching the world worship his mother while he tried to understand why her fame sometimes hurt more than it helped. His childhood would be different, darker, and far more complicated, because where Michael escaped, Christopher Wilding stayed and saw the price of Hollywood from the inside. Christopher Wilding entered the world in February 1955, and from the moment he opened his eyes, he was surrounded by a level of attention no child should ever have to understand. His parents divorced when he was just 2. He was too young to remember it, but old enough to feel the aftershocks for years. His earliest memories weren't of playgrounds or birthday cakes. They were of cameras, flashes, strangers shouting his mother's name, a mother the entire planet adored, but Christopher had to share with millions. Elizabeth Taylor tried to protect her boys. She took them to Europe, hoping to give them a life untouched by Hollywood noise. But there is no place far enough when the world sees your mother as a goddess. Christopher once described their childhood, trying to find peace in a room filled with fireworks. At school, he faced a different kind of storm. Classmates who were supposed to be children repeated the things they heard their parents whisper, teasing him for his mother's marriages, her scandals, her beauty, her decisions. Imagine being 10 years old and hearing your mother's private heartbreak turned into lunchtime jokes, and yet he never resented her, not even once. He just learned early that being Elizabeth Taylor's son meant growing up with a spotlight he never asked for and never wanted. As Christopher grew older, he realized he didn't want to run from filmmaking just from the fame attached to it. He didn't want fans. He wanted craft. He didn't want red carpets. He wanted purpose. And so while the world assumed he'd become an actor like his parents, he quietly turned to the part of Hollywood that stays hidden, sound editing. He became the man behind the curtain, shaping movies in silence, adding depth to scenes without ever appearing in them. He worked on films people still love today, Overboard.
I'm not paying for your mistake.
And she always got it.
You haven't got a single thing on this earth.
Judgment Night.
A night out on the town. A heavy traffic jam.
Tell you something, I'm not gonna miss this.
The Shadow.
He was consumed by evil.
For as long as you can remember.
Tombstone. Movies full of chaos, drama, and action, even as Christopher himself lived a life of deliberate quiet.
The stranger was your enemy. Until Wyatt Earp and his brother.
To him, sound wasn't just a job, it was an escape, it was control. In sound editing, the noise obeyed him, unlike the noise of his childhood, which had always been uncontrollable, unpredictable, relentless. Working behind the scenes gave him the one thing fame had never allowed him, an identity that belonged to him alone. Christopher's first marriage was to Eileen Getty, a union that once again put him back under a microscope. The Getty family was one of the wealthiest in the world. Instantly, the curiosity returned. People wondered what two dynasties looked like when forced under one roof. They adopted one son, Caleb, then welcomed another, Andrew. For a while, life seemed hopeful, a chance at a stable family he never fully had as a child, but the pressures were enormous. None of them escaped scrutiny, and slowly, painfully, the marriage collapsed. When it ended, Christopher made a choice that defined the rest of his life. He protected his sons from the noise that had shaped him. Later, when he married Margie Carlton, a sound professional like himself, something shifted inside him. Here was a woman who understood the world behind the screen, a woman who valued privacy, a woman who didn't need the spotlight because she was too busy doing real work. With her, Christopher welcomed his third son, Lowell, and for the first time in decades, Christopher lived in a home untouched by headlines, a home where life unfolded quietly, gently, without the ever-present hum of flashbulbs and gossip. But even in this peace, there was something unspoken between him and the mother he loved, a wound never fully healed, a truth they both carried. Elizabeth Taylor was known for her passion, her temper, her generosity, but also for the guilt she felt as a mother. She knew she hadn't always been present. She knew she'd sometimes put her career, her marriages, her turmoil before the quiet needs of children who didn't ask to share her with the world. Later in life, when the spotlight softened and her body began to betray her, she spoke to Christopher with an honesty that shattered him. She told him she feared she had not been a great mother. This was Elizabeth Taylor, a woman worshipped by millions, confessing a fear that made her feel smaller than she had ever appeared on screen. Christopher's response was immediate. Gentle, clear. I felt like she was a good mother. It wasn't easy to do. It was forgiveness wrapped in truth, because her life was impossible. Her fame was overwhelming. and her heart, though enormous, was constantly being pulled in every direction. This moment between mother and son revealed a side of Elizabeth Taylor the world rarely saw, a woman who loved fiercely but quietly feared she hadn't given enough. Christopher's words freed her, and in many ways they freed him too. When Elizabeth Taylor died in 2011, the media erupted, tributes flooded in, fans mourned across continents. But for her children, the loss was personal, not historical. Christopher didn't just lose a global icon. He lost the woman who had tucked him in at night, who had called him my darling boy, who had apologized for all the things she couldn't control. After her death, he stepped into a role few knew existed. He became a trustee of her vast estate, helping oversee her art, her business, her intellectual property, and the staggering legacy she left behind. He even joined legal action when a major auction house mishandled her possessions, a battle not about money, but respect. And always, always, he protected her most important work, the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation. To Christopher, this wasn't charity. It was his mother's heart, her fight, her soul, and he guarded it with the same devotion she once fought with. But the story doesn't end with the sons who carried her sorrow. It turns now to the daughter who carried her grief. A daughter born into celebration, only to lose the one man Elizabeth Taylor claimed she loved most before she celebrated her first birthday. Her life would be shaped by a tragedy she never remembered, but one that defined her mother forever. And her journey is the next chapter in this legacy of love and loss. Liza Todd was born into a moment the world called perfect. The only child of Elizabeth Taylor and producer Mike Todd, her birth in August 1957 made national headlines. Photographers swarmed the hospital. Life magazine put mother and baby on its cover. Hollywood celebrated her arrival like royalty. But 7 months later, the celebration ended. Mike Todd's plane crashed in New Mexico, killing everyone on board. Elizabeth collapsed when she heard the news. She later said her heart shattered that day, and a part of her never fully healed. Liza would grow up knowing her father only through stories others told, stories of a man bursting with charisma, ambition, joy. She inherited his spark, but she never got the chance to hear his voice. In the years that followed, Elizabeth remarried twice, first to Eddie Fisher, then to Richard Burton, and Burton, with all his contradictions and brilliance, became the father figure Liza actually knew. He adopted her, guided her, loved her, and she simply called him Dad. But life with Taylor and Burton was anything but normal. Some days were filled with laughter and opulent family dinners. Other days were filled with screaming matches, tears, and the chaos of two of the world's most famous people, trying and failing to stay together. Amid all of this, Liza learned something important. Fame was loud, too loud, and if she ever wanted peace, she'd have to create it herself. While her mother mastered the screen, Liza turned to something quieter, something entirely her own, art. She studied in Switzerland, then in London, then at the Otis Art Institute in Los Angeles, and slowly she found her voice not in words, not in fame, but in bronze. Her sculptures of horses and wildlife became her signature, graceful, precise, soulful. Critics admired her ability to capture movement, the tension in a horse's neck, the quiet power in a resting animal. Her pieces appeared in galleries around the world, selling for thousands. Yet despite her growing acclaim, Liza avoided the spotlight with absolute conviction. She settled in upstate New York, raising her two sons surrounded by fields, animals, and silence. She rarely gave interviews, rarely appeared in public, rarely spoke about being Elizabeth Taylor's daughter. Not out of resentment, but out of wisdom. Her mother lived her life under a magnifying glass. Liza chose to live hers behind the glass, protected, private, free. Still, whether she wanted it or not, the Taylor legacy would eventually find its way into the next generation, especially through her son, Quinn, one of Elizabeth Taylor's grandchildren, who stepped forward to help manage the family estate and honor the work his grandmother held most dear. But Liza wasn't the only daughter shaped by a complicated beginning. Another child entered Elizabeth's life, not through birth, but through a decision made with fierce compassion, a daughter whose early years were defined not by luxury, but by pain. Maria Burton's story began far from Hollywood glamour. Born in Germany around August 1961, she spent her earliest days in a Munich orphanage. She suffered from a congenital hip condition. Doctors warned she might never walk normally. Her future was uncertain. Then Elizabeth Taylor walked into her life. The world saw Elizabeth as a star. Maria saw her as a lifeline. Elizabeth adopted her, reportedly, while still married to Eddie Fisher. And when she later married Richard Burton, he adopted Maria as well. Maria became a Burton, not by blood, but by love. Her childhood was unlike any of Elizabeth's other children. While the others navigated paparazzi and public scrutiny, Maria navigated hospitals and surgery rooms. She underwent nearly 24 procedures to correct her hip. During those years, Elizabeth and Burton stood beside her, fierce and protective, in a way the public rarely saw. To the world, Elizabeth was diamonds and drama. To Maria, she was a guardian. As she grew older, Maria developed a talent for design and creativity. She co-founded a boutique talent agency with her first husband, Steve Carson, showing she could build a life connected to the entertainment world without being consumed by it. Maria married twice, raised 2 children, Eliza and Richard, and kept them shielded from the intrusions she remembered all too well. Her daughter, Eliza Carson, would later step into a public role as an ambassador for the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation, helping extend her grandmother's humanitarian legacy. Maria didn't need the spotlight. She didn't crave it. She didn't chase it. She simply lived, quietly, deliberately, gracefully. Elizabeth Taylor's life was a cascade of sensational headlines: 8 marriages, 2 Oscars, public battles, legendary romances. But her children lived a story the world rarely understood. Michael, the son who looked so much like her, yet spent his life carving out an identity that belonged solely to him. Christopher, the boy who spent his childhood escaping paparazzi and his adulthood escaping fame itself. Liza, the daughter shaped by love, loss, and silence, who found her safe haven in sculpting beauty from bronze. Maria, the child Elizabeth rescued, who built a life defined not by the glamour of the one who saved her, but by quiet endurance. Their paths were different, their struggles unique, but they shared one truth. They loved Elizabeth Taylor not as an icon, not as a legend, but as a mother trying, sometimes failing, to protect her children in a world that refused to leave her alone. And now, decades after the world first fell in love with Elizabeth Taylor, it is her children and grandchildren who keep her true legacy alive. Not the diamonds, not the films, but the heart behind them. The heart she passed down quietly, imperfectly, and with more love than the world ever knew. If stories like this move you, if you want to hear the truth behind the legends you thought you knew, follow RetroWaves. Here we bring forgotten lives back into the light with honesty, with heart, and with the respect every story deserves.